Diego. Diego is a vice president and principal analyst at Forrester, and he's been with Forrester since July 2005. Diego, welcome to the webinar.
Good morning and good afternoon, everybody. Thank you, Ravi, for the intro.
Thank you, Diego. Just to get this thing started, I think some context is probably important. When we wanted to work with Diego on this webinar, as well as some other work that we've done in the past, his background and the sort of the trusted advisor that he is, some of his research becomes particularly important. So, I have a list of some of the things that he's working on, but the context for our conversation is the following. When Diego talks to his clients, he's mostly advising them on app development and delivery. He's talking about agile development, agile testing practices, things like DevOps and software testing. And of course, he does have to look at software delivery metrics and AI. And he also looks at open source governance. So when you think about all of these different things, the real focus is on development, the real focus is on agility, the real focus is on how to transform organizations. So that's really what we want to talk about today, and sort of really get Diego's inputs on some of these topics. So with that, Diego, should we get started?
Sure.
Let's hit the road. Yeah, sounds good, Diego. So first off, obviously this is an impressive set of publications. A lot of them are recent, and there's an interesting one about Turing bots that's coming out as well. But if you just think about modern app development, and if you think about modern app development from the standpoint of technology trends, what are these key trends that you're seeing, and especially these trends as they relate to development?
Yeah, so for the last 10, 15 years, I've been writing a lot about agile. Agile has been around now for really a long time. If you think, long time compared to how long IT has been around, which is what, it's a 70-year more or less science that's been, right. It's not like medical or medicine that's been around for thousands of years. It's relatively young. But anyway, of those, whatever, less than 100 years, let's say 70 years, most of it's been waterfall really. And but the last 10, everybody has been trying to become more agile, introducing agility. Why? I think things have changed quite a bit. When I started in Olivetti, my career, I remember for the first few years, I was asked to define and design architectures that lasted long, right? It was like, we have to have an architecture that we don't have to change things for 10, 15 years. We had a lot of banking clients. We had products for banking, for retail, and so forth. And the goal was durability of the architecture. If you fast forward now to 2022, what is it? It's completely different, right? Architectures have to change. Architectures have to embrace change, and everything we do is about continuous change. And so continuous change, so there's an architectural aspect, and we've seen lots of trends in those areas, of course, right? Today we went through the phases of service-oriented architectures also years ago. Now we're kind of, we're moving architectures on the cloud with containers, with microservices. So decoupling architectures and is becoming very important, because that supports the agility that we want at the higher level. Because if you want to really become and be agile, you have to be able to organize teams around, small services, around smaller components rather than huge big releases. And so the architecture has to enable that, right? So agile has been a trend that's been there for 10 years, but it's kind of, surrounded by a number of other trends. So DevOps came along to continue what agile started in breaking down the wall between business and development. DevOps had added, that further agility towards towards going from development to operations. And that's also, and so that end-to-end agility really comes with Agile and DevOps. Now, this sounds like nothing new, but actually it is still new for many organizations, because what today the biggest trend I see, and you can read that in the first report, the Global State of Agile 2022, becoming proficient in Agile is like undertaking a long journey to Mars. It's hard. It's hard because it's not just a technology issue. It's a people, process, and technology issue, right? So basically what we're seeing, in order to kind of really reach this increased business agility, well, there's a number of things. We're seeing a huge trend around low code and citizen development, right? And we can't ignore that. 71% of development teams around the world claim that they are adopting a low code, no code platform, or are planning to do so. Now, why is this? Why? I mean, low code has been around actually for quite some time. I remember when I was a programmer, there were low code tools, 20 years ago, 30 years ago. But the difference now is that if the technology, of course, has improved a lot, and they really have raised the level of abstraction, and they are more efficient in dealing with complex problems that today we deal with, C plus with high coding languages, let's say. And so now, why is low code important? Well, actually, that research that you see here, which is, by the way, also in the works, it hasn't been published yet, Agile and low code rocket fuel for digital transformations. What we found, we've been doing the research around that, and what clients have been telling us is that actually, it kind of intrigued us, me and John. I say us because it's me with John Brattensvik. He's the low code analyst in Forrester. And what intrigued us was, well, is there something in common? Is there something that one can help the other? So if organizations, if only 25% of the organizations are really truly proficient in becoming more agile, is there something that can help increase that percentage, give it a booster? And guess what? That booster is low code. And the reason is because if you're working in low code, you're really meeting and enacting the agile principles of delivering things in short iterations, focusing on software rather than documentation. Well, the low code platform itself is the code, but at the same time, it's the documentation. The report will show all the data of clients telling us these things. So we did this analysis further to find out that actually low code can actually be an additional booster for organizations to become more agile and add to business agility, right? That doesn't replace DevOps, of course, because that's been another important trend that organizations are working on. And so now, low code won't replace high code, right? What it will do is it will, the cultural aspect of low code is also very important. We've been talking about citizen development, and that's another trend that people are reading about, probably, which means that business people, non-technical people, that can now build their own applications. Now, I'm not necessarily a big fan of thinking that these guys will be building all of the business applications and that an organization will have to deliver. But they certainly can build their own type of improvement and automated, they can automate certain processes inside of what they do day in, day out with their job. They can automate things by themselves. They can build applications instead of asking IT to do them for them with these low code tools. And so what happens, I really like this statement, this tagline that Shell calls citizen development. Shell, the oil and gas company, the huge, huge British oil and gas company. Right. They came up with this term, do it yourself, DIY. That's what citizen development is all about. It's do it yourself. It's the perfect culture. Yeah, it's the perfect culture with Agile, right? Because it fits and matches very nicely. And so basically, if you give people in an organization, and 100,000 people organization is huge. Shell has 4,500 do-it-yourself programmers on the business side. Those 4,500, besides the stuff that they're building, which is important, they're saving all that time to IT that can focus on really building the platform, the innovative applications, the core strategic apps that Shell needs to run to execute, to run their business. So in general, what low code does, it really saves time to IT in order to be able to focus the strong resources we have in IT and the few resources, because the other big problem is that there's a big scarcity of developer capacity, and so this kind of helps in that area as well. It helps address that issue of developer of the capacity of developer, the capacity that we don't have enough developers.
So is this the topic? Is this the meat of the second publication, First Look Turing Bots?
No, I wasn't. Well, it's that's a good point. Actually, what I was talking about was the third publication, Agile and Low Code.
Okay.
But the question is what you asked is actually quite important, because, and I'll talk about Turing bots in a minute, because that second report talks about, okay, so we've given, it talks about how can we make development easier? So it's kind of addressing the same problem of low code, easier at supporting developers. But really, that right now, the Turing bots that we're seeing, so Turing bot technology is something that low code platforms can also use to become easier to leverage AI. They can leverage AI to become better tools. So I guess that kind of brings me to the question, to answer the question, what is a Turing bot? And I was going to get there by saying, okay, so if that's all happening on the low code, citizen development, do-it-yourself trend, what else are we doing for the high coders, right? For guys like us, architects that use, open, that might be using open platforms, right? DevOps and continuous delivery. Well, that's where Turing bots really right now are focusing on. So a Turing bot is basically an AI-infused, it is an AI-infused software that augments capabilities of developers and development teams during all the stages of the software development lifecycle. So basically, it's using machine learning, AI, reinforcement learning, computer vision, and other AI technologies to support development teams and developers during the stage of analysis and planning, design, build, test, deploy, right? And so that report, the first look of Turing. By the way, Turing bots are part of our 20 of our future, the top 10 technology trends. We have 10 top technology trends in Forrester that we wrote about and we published, and Turing bots is one of them. And this report is just like a first look, digging a bit deeper into what I just talked, into Turing bots. And so it's a technology that will mature, within 5 to 7, 10 years, perhaps, becoming mainstream. However, along the different software development lifecycle, some Turing bots are more mature than others. Okay. You guys have a testing platform. You guys are, Kairos. Well, you've been using a lot of AI in Kairos, right? So Kairos is what I would call a tester Turing bot, supporting a tester. Today, supporting and augmenting a tester. I don't think testing will ever become truly autonomous, at least not in a time frame that I see. I don't know. You might have an opinion there. We can happy to discuss. But basically, that a Turing bot is going to help tester test smarter, right? Other Turing bots right now that people that might resemble things that people are right now seeing in the market is Copilot, right? So that's a coding Turing bot. So it's a Turing bot that helps the developer specifically that in writing his code, a developer can write a comment and Copilot will be kind of a pair programmer, generating for those 2 lines of comments, maybe 10, 15 lines of code, and the developer looks at the code and says, yes, he accepts it. That's good. That this code works. It is what I was looking for. And you kind of, and so it's a very intelligent auto-completion tool. And Amazon is doing the same with Code Whisperer. Tab9 is another important player, smaller startup in this in the market of Turing bots. So Turing bots is something that I will be doing a lot of research going forward in all the different software development lifecycle steps, testing is going to be one of them.
Got it.
And I've probably skipped a lot of trends, but there's a lot more going on. But that's the stuff that I'm writing about, right? It's agile, low-code testing, and how those are changing.
I think that this is really useful. So first off, from a very personal standpoint, I like and appreciate the homage to Alan Turing. And I think there's a lot that he did that hasn't been acknowledged. There's a lot that he did during his lifetime that was certainly not acknowledged. And it's only now that we're recognizing the work that he did. And the idea of naming, so this is a Forrester term, right, Turing bots?
Yes, I'm hoping it will.
It'll become the standard.
Become a standard. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think
that's very ambitious.
Yeah, I think it's a very apt name for what you're discussing here. But if for this important question about the trends, my notes are the following. If I could sort of sum up what I heard, I'd welcome you to fill in the gaps. So my key takeaways are sort of Agile and DevOps have become mainstream or continue to become more and more part of the mainstream. So you mentioned that a few times, at least the notion of Agile, and then the sense that I get from what you said is that as applications become more complex or as applications become more sophisticated, the coding requirements are going to become equally sophisticated or complex, which means that if I were to go back to your shell example and the citizen developer, the idea of bringing in other users into the coding practice is probably timely. So whether it's business innovators or business analysts, just getting them into the SDLC is a timely conversation. So towards that goal, if I heard what you said, low code, no code will continue to scale, and it will also address the scaling requirements of complex coding. And then just sort of my summary of what you said about AI and AI ML is that trend will also continue, obviously. But again, if I were to go into your shell example, it seems like if some of these things are domain focused, then there's probably more success there. But finally, you're saying that the one thing that we should be thinking about, at least in the context of your research and in the context of development, it's this notion or this idea called Turing bots, which are arguably sort of the next generation development platforms.
Yeah,
that's sort of my understanding.
So let me give you a little example. You're right that, I mean, it's definitely true that, of course, today building, it's not like when I was building software applications, there was a beginning and an end to a program, and everything in it, right, I had control of. Today, it's completely different, and it's becoming really hard. We talk about. If you think about a developer that has to remember all the APIs that and the parameters that an API might require, think about doing that on S3 Amazon. It's very hard. You spend a lot of time as a developer going and searching for the documentation, figuring out what API to call and what parameter to give it. And there you've got Whisper, where you can just write down, I want to access this type of API. And boom, there it goes, and it shows you the API. It actually writes you the code, and it gives you the parameters. So basically, it takes away all the mundane, boring work that developers, which is, by the way, for a developer, and I'm just talking about the coding time,
Right.
probably takes away 80% of his time to do that, right? And only 20% is on the business logic. So now if we can take all that 80% away and have something that is, basically there providing that suggestion and for the developer, he's going to be saving a lot of time and has more time to focus on the application logic. And that's what really the coding Turing bot will do. There's a DevOps Turing bot or delivery Turing bot that will do. People call it AI ops, right? I'm just giving these Turing. They're all Turing bots
Right.
for me, and I'm just adding the step and the stage. But think about all the, again, configuration to set up a continuous delivery pipeline, or the, again, the tweaking of the infrastructure that you need to do. All that time can be saved if there is a delivery Turing bot, which, by the way, companies like GitLab and even GitHub are thinking about, and there's a lot of AI ops stuff out there. So every area will benefit from an AI, helping speed up the job. Think about the analysis and design phase, right? So Microsoft, this is still in the research labs, but there's actually a low-code platform that does it too, is where you can now sketch your user interface hand-driven, and it will generate HTML5 for it from a hand-driven, right? That's thanks to computer vision, right? And so, or think about the planning of having all the data that we have, the so-called, I call it developer insights Turing bot, can look at all that data, and you can ask it questions like, well, who's working on this module, or can you help me, find where this library, who built this library, and give him his telephone number. I mean, even things, or here's the schedule we have. Here's what we're, where we are today with what we've done. Give me tell me if you think that we're going to be able to deliver by that date, or is there something missing, and what can we do? So that's the developer insights Turing bot. And so in each phase, and and in testing, of course, that's the most mature Turing bot today, right?
Yes.
In the report, I say that's the one you can execute on today. Developers can find that in testing tools, and there's many use cases, right? Optimizing testing, being able to do visual testing. There's a lot of use cases, right? Over 10 or 12 that I've documented, and I will be updating next year for the tester Turing bot. So while this technology the return on investment mainstream will be farther out, some of for all of the Turing bots of the software development lifecycle, some of them are leverageable today. So it starts with Turing bots that can be you can execute with, so there are Turing bots you can experiment with, there are Turing bots you can actually get work done, and there's Turing bots that you should watch and carefully monitor. And there you go to the more far sophisticated Turing bots like AlphaCode with DeepMinds that is capable of reading an exercise, a programming exercise, quite difficult, right? This is not normally, it's like half a page with those end conditions that are hard to program in an algorithm. So it's able to read one of those problems, solve the problem, find the solution to the problem, and then generate the code for it. So that's a problem solver, right? That's a true programmer at this point. It's more than autocomplete. And it looks like the average, the expertise of AlphaCode is comparable to the expertise of a above average developer. They've benchmarked this with, because they do all these hackathons and certifications. So anyway, I think there's a lot from a development perspective. That's the most important trend that I see that will be really disrupting the way we build software, and how much smartness we will be putting into it.
That's fantastic. I mean, I love the details there, Diego. And I will say this: when it comes to Kairos, and especially our testing platform, I'm almost wondering if we should rename that as the testing Turing bot. But I suppose the Turing bot phrase is already copyrighted. So, but you know, I think there's
No, you
plenty
can
to
use Turing
do.
bot.
What's that?
It is a testing Turing bot.
It is, yeah. I mean, I'm just thinking about it from that standpoint. And as many conversations as I've had with you, I didn't quite think of it in those terms. So that gives me some, you know, at least it gives me some additional insight. Well, this is great. So, you know, I want to pick up on something you said about citizen developers. And, you know, the other term is also this idea of, you know, democratization and the idea of bringing the business user into these conversations, which of course is about Turing bots. But you know, if we were to just take a step back, you know, use all this technology, but just approach this next question, maybe from the standpoint of modern app development, right? So you've written extensively about modern app development. So the question for me, I guess, is, you know, how do modern app development practices help improve the business user's participation, especially when you compare it to you know, the more traditional types of application development.
Yeah.
So again, this is more of a business user type conversation.
Yeah, I think you know, you call it business user. Well, you call it business user. I like to call that role or business analyst. I like to call that role more of a product owner or product manager, because today, as you know, another important trend we're seeing that is being enabled by Agile and DevOps is organizations moving from project to product organizations. And what does that mean? Well, it means basically the software that's being delivered is more tied, you know, has for you as a software, if you were a software company, it would be quite natural that you think you think of products, you don't think of projects. But banks, insurance companies, you know, clients, end user companies have always thought in terms of projects, not products. And
Right.
the big difference is that thinking about product is you have a sales mindset around it, you have a marketing mindset around it, you have an evolutionary roadmap. It's not a project that starts and finishes, it's a continuous, you have to have a roadmap that continuously, you know, puts evolution into the product. And so the role of a product or product owner is only someone that has to be from the business, and that it really, so basically this is actually, if you look at the state of agile research, you'll see that among the top 3 challenges, 2 of them are about product owners. The first challenge says product owners from the business don't have enough or sufficient skills to play that role. The second challenge, which is the third one, sorry, around product owners, but it's the third in the state of agile, because the second is around culture and behavior, is that sorry, on the business side, there's not enough product owners that are committed to playing that role with IT and with the, you know, with the teams that are building the software. It's like saying software is not our business to some extent, right? But if you think about it, the way with John we've defined what digital is, we've defined it as business models with technology at the core. And what is that technology at the core? It's software. So in other words, writing software is going to be a key, or being involved in the writing of the software or building of products. In other words, business has a very important role to play, right? They have to lead this. They can't just be sitting there. They have to be very active in deciding what are the requirements that will go into the next release or the next feature that is going to be deployed, prioritizing the backlog. And so the role of a product owner will be, or of the business will be, to think a little bit differently from the traditional world of big releases and think more in terms of minimum viable products. So what is it that because now what we want to do, right? Agile is still here. It's very important. I think it will be for the next 10 years, but it's imposing us to think differently about, instead of releasing a big, huge release in 6 months, let's deliver, let's say, 6 smaller ones so that we can start delivering sooner, first of all, and generate value sooner. And and just iterate, right? And so after 6 months, you've basically finished the entire product. It's just giving an example there. But you know what? Business are not necessarily, not everybody on the business side is ready to think in those terms, right? Is not ready to think about small minimum viable features and small and minimum viable products versus big releases, which is what they've been doing, and for the last 50, 60 years.
Right. This is very helpful. So, in fact, when I read your paper, there were a couple points that came to my mind as well. I mean, just thinking about Agile and, how proficient are companies, there was some number, some percentage, like 7% or something, was a number of companies that are proficient in Agile. So, I mean, I think there are some challenges there as well. And then I think you're also right about
26% are proficient.
26%
with over 5 years. And by the way, most of the organizations that were part of that survey have been in an agile journey for more than 5 years.
Right.
And many organizations in the world have been on journeys to agile for more than 5 years. That's why that's why I say that agile, becoming proficient in agile at the enterprise level, is like a long journey to Mars.
Right. So this is helpful, but I think if I were to sort of combine everything we've discussed so far, the best way to bring the product owner or the business owner is obviously with all the technology that's available with modern app development. It's also making sure that there's leadership, as you said, and bringing the business on board, focusing on minimum viable products as opposed to these big releases. And specifically, I think you're emphasizing the issue of skills. So whether it's skill development or just acquiring the right skills, that seems to be an important element of bringing it all together and providing that leadership. So at least that's my summary takeaway from what you said.
Yeah. I want to anticipate something from the research that we haven't published yet, which is listed here: Agile and Low Code Rocket Fuel Digital Transformations. There's a presentation we did at both you in the US, John did, and I did in Europe in London. So I think that's available for clients, Forrester clients, on our website. But a few clients told us that the citizen development program, right, with business people even building their own stuff, right? They do it yourself. Once they've gone through doing it themselves for some time, they become the perfect product owners. So in Shell, it wasn't Shell. I don't remember what the company was. There's a large company that basically gives to the business people a career path to become product owners, and normally they kind of pick them out from the pool of business people that start using low code by themselves. So it looks like it addresses the skill issue that you just mentioned.
Excellent. That's helpful, Diego. So if I were to just add on a small question to almost the same topic, but if I were to sort of lay on top of this the idea of innovation. Obviously innovation is an important element of MAD or modern app development. And in order to build applications that have true impact, the organization has to change, right? I mean, that there's this cultural element that's not just at the individual, but at the leadership and at the organization level. Is there something that you would like to sort of comment on as far as culture at the organization level is concerned?
We don't have a lot of time, so I'm going to be very short on this one and fast. But basically, the same report again, right? I mentioned that the top 3 challenges for organizations that are becoming more agile 2 of them were around product owners. The second one of those 3 was exactly around cultural change and behavioral change. And it's always been one of the top 3 challenges of any organization that is trying to become more agile, right? That is looking forward to execute on this concept of business agility. So the issue, the issue is that some organizations, again, they don't think they undertake the program of maybe introducing new technology, of maybe introducing new practices, but they don't spend enough time on cultural change, and cultural change that happens from the top to the bottom. So in other words, basically this means that even at the strategic level, the company has to define who the company wants to be, right? What are the key values of the company and how? And now, if you really want to be agile, right? One thing that I keep telling people is look at the Agile Manifesto. There's 4 values, 12 principles. Those are enough. If and even a CEO would understand those. So what I see big companies do is they look at the Agile values and principles, and they kind of get inspired in defining their own values that align to the culture that they're that leverages the culture that exists in the organization, but with tweaks and changes if they want to make those changes to become more agile, because it does require a mental shift. It requires working in a different way. It requires that managers are less directive and more change agents all the way through, right? It requires that that teams become more autonomous, and so we managers have to let go that command and control attitude. So I think even in we can learn from the Agile Manifesto, from Agile. There's good learnings there for organizations to kind of base their own Agile and their own values and principles, and I've seen many organizations that like define them very nicely. Basically writing down the value and how they want to execute on it. It requires, right, having a change program, and it requires a lot of coaching and training and immersive training, immersive experience, because change is hard. It's the hardest thing actually for organizations to really go through.
Yeah, but I think I'm reminded of something you've said in some of our conversations in conversations past, where agile is not the end goal, but agile is more the characteristic of the culture that you should have, or something along those lines. I mean, your statements were much more eloquent, but that kind of stuck with me. So trying to be agile, where the objective is agile, never really works.
Agile is a journey. Yeah, it's not
Right.
the destination.
Right. No, and that's so again, probably just in the interest of time, but just summarize some of these things. So I get the innovation part, I get the culture part. I think an important element that you added to this conversation is the role and the function and the skill set of the product owner, which again lends itself to that whole debate about the struggle to go from project to a product mindset, so that's useful. And all of this in the context of DevOps and Agile, and especially in the context of complexity that's coming down the pike, and the notion of Turing bots. So I have one last question for you, Diego, if you would. If you were to pull all of these together, these things that we've discussed from your point of view, especially the trends, and sort of provide sort of this final advice to, I say, the business user, you may call them the product owner, in terms of how should they go about securing approval, securing funding, et cetera, for some of their ideas and some of their products. I mean, how do they get started?
Right.
Any thoughts from you?
Well, the first thing, if you specifically, because you're specifically talking about a business person, a business user,
That's
partner
right.
with your technology executive. I mean, that's the first thing I would do, right? On the organizations are made of a technology management organization and business lines. First thing I would say, partner with your technology execs, and therefore find some business problem that you want to do an experiment on, something that is not too risky, that is not too hard, and if you're working with your technology executive, probably he's going to advise you to and a lot, and I'm going to focus this around modern application development, because otherwise it gets too broad.
Right. Yeah, of course.
So business user says, I want to really build products in a new, different way. I want to be faster. I want to adopt agile. the first thing, so partner with your tech exec, because probably they're trying to do this and they're not necessarily getting enough support on the business side, right? So communicate, first thing. Second thing is look for that business idea. So if I translate into more technical languages, look for a value stream where people, process, and technology can be, and what you need to do to the processes, and to the technology in that value stream to be able to modernize the way of building your applications, right? So
Right.
so that way you're limiting it. You're not doing it, this is not a big bang approach won't work. So you focus on a value stream and you start pulling together your own framework, your idea, your experience. So you kind of do it the first time. Some organizations kind of want to come up with a perfect framework before they start. That's a big waste of time. Just get enough of it, right? Get some training around agile and scrum, and pull together a continuous, with your technical people. You can pull together the pipeline, which can be all open source. You don't have to necessarily go out and buy big stuff. Start experimenting, and then basically look back, see what you learned, reformalize, redefine what you did, and then if that was successful, measure it, by the way, right? So put how is success going to be measured, right? Here's the business idea, here's the value stream I'm going to apply it on. How am I going to measure success? And start measuring success from the very beginning. And once that works, if that works and you're successful with it, repeat, right? And now you look for the next value stream, and so forth, right? So it's an agile way of innovating.
Got it. So again, my note saying, number one, adopt agile. Of course, number two, get funding. And then if I've understood your comment about value streams and especially value-based conversations, I think you're saying build into domains or build density in domains, which I completely agree with. And then you say the importance of delivering, again, through Agile is POCs, make sure those things happen, measure consistently and constantly, which to me is structured governance, and
measure business value, right?
And measure business
that's
value.
the key metric of modern application development is, and I call it the outcome metric, is measuring business value. And there are many ways you can measure business value. It's not easy, but the shift is happening. People are starting to focus around measuring business value with other leading metrics around it, of course, quality, efficiency, and so forth.
Yeah, and I think, just to close out that question, there's something that you said that in turn reminded me of a phrase that I picked up at a conference, the idea of a permanent beta. So, so I think what you said was, just start small, don't wait for something perfect, get started and get in that agile mode. And so that kind of reminded me of this phrase, permanent beta, because I think most of our products are permanent betas, especially given your first comment about complexity changing our businesses, and therefore we need various solutions. Great. So Diego, thank you very much. This is extremely useful. Not only do I appreciate your time and your insights, but most of all, we appreciate your willingness to share research with your research with a broader audience. And from a very personal standpoint, besides this conversation, I do want to thank you again for guiding and mentoring us as at Quinnox in our own product journey. As you know, and this is for the benefit of our viewers, we're building 3 platforms, and these platforms are in the testing space, and I think you referred to Kairos as the testing Turing bot. And along similar lines, we're building a platform called Coalesce. That's again a no-code discovery engine and a no-code governance engine for managing multiple instances of various integration platforms. And then the third one is Quinfinite, where again, it's this idea of using no-code capability to do application discovery and building knowledge graphs. And again, it's to the point that you made earlier, it's AI, MLOps specific. But I think the key thing that I wanted to say is that obviously we've borrowed from Agile, whether it's the idea of organizational agility, how do we use our platforms to drive that concept? the importance of technology, the importance of agile product delivery, especially when it comes to Kairos, and that was the key, that was the motivating factor for us. But I think the most important thing is that just about everything that we're doing is more or less driven by the set of early statements that you made about low code and no code. So the central philosophy for us is to remove complexity, abstract complexity. You know, for the developer who wants to write code, yes, every one of our platforms will allow you to do that. But the idea behind throughput and other things from a speed to market standpoint, you know, we're all about a low code, no code philosophy and making AI central to just about everything that we do. So that's our story. And again, Diego, I want to thank you for your wisdom and your counsel, and most of all for your time. And for our viewers, you know, if you have any questions about, you know, where do I start? If you have any questions about this conversation, if you have questions for either me or for Diego, please scan this QR code. You can reach out to us. And for those of us who want to start a POC based on the advice that Diego just provided, again, scan the QR code, contact us. You know, we're more than happy to set up complimentary POCs. We're also more than happy to provide access to our platforms so that you can get started on your journey. With that, thank you very much. Diego, any closing comments?
Thank you, Ravi.
Thank you, Diego.
No, thank you very much. It's always a pleasure to work with you guys. You're doing some very interesting stuff.
Thank you so much, sir. Take care, everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye.